You're not even worthy of being my father. I stopped mid-motion with the wrench in my hand and looked at Marcus standing in the middle of the garage, hands in his pockets, eyes full of defiance and contempt. 9 years of effort, countless late-night overtime hours, summer camps, private schools, the BMW, and the computer, all of it vanished in an instant, as if his words had sucked the air right out of the room. His voice was sharp and piercing, like shattering glass, yet heavy like a hammer striking my chest. What do you mean? I asked quietly, placing the tool on the side table. What do you mean? You only care about my grades and rules. Derek is the one who actually cares about me. He doesn't check homework, he doesn't impose restrictions. You're nothing. I wiped the grease off my hands and walked toward him, my gaze calm but icy. All right, I said. If you think I'm not your father, then you'll bear all the consequences yourself. Tuition. Stopped. Car. Repossessed. Computer. Taken back. The real father you want. Go find him. Marcus froze, eyes wide, fingertips trembling on his phone. You can't do this. I can. I threw the keys onto the table with a crisp clink, my movements deliberate and calculated. I wanted him to see, promises have consequences if not honored. From that moment, the world began to realign. Veronica brought Derek, thinking they could charm Marcus back with flashy words, but they hadn't anticipated that I had already prepared evidence, invoices, and school documents. Derek's confidence crumbled in the face of reality. I watched as panic and helplessness flashed in his eyes until, under the glare of police lights, he trembled, pleading with regret. At that moment, I knew it wasn't about winning, it was about truth exposing the facade of false paternal affection. I remembered 9 years ago when his mother, Veronica, left me, taking her new lover to an apartment across the city. I was only 34, shouldering the responsibilities of the family alone. That summer, I had just finished checking the construction site's material list, covered in dust and sweat, and returned to an empty house. On the dining table was an old paper bag with the birthday cake she had left for Marcus. Her note read, "I need freedom. You take care of yourselves." Marcus, only 8 at the time, stood at the kitchen doorway, crying inconsolably. I held his hand and sat with him on the worn sofa, feeling a loneliness I had never known. But I told myself, all right, we'll manage on our own. I vowed then that, no matter if she returned, would give Marcus a better life than she could imagine. Over the next 9 years, I poured nearly all my energy into work and my son. I woke up at 5 every day, managing construction sites, coordinating materials, handling client complaints, then rushing home to tutor Marcus. Weekends weren't for fancy restaurants, they were for summer camps, piano lessons, and coding classes. I had almost no personal leisure time. The BMW was a gift I had scrimped and saved for, the computer was the fruit of 2 months of overtime. Yet, all of that effort crumbled under Marcus's words, "You're not my father." I watched his defiant expression and felt an urge to make him understand consequences. I recalled my own youthful humiliation, parents divorced, mocked at school for being poor, splashed with water by classmates, lunch stolen. In college, I was publicly scolded by a professor, "People like you shouldn't even study this subject." That feeling of being looked down upon and ignored still pierced like needles. But it was also those experiences that gave me the ability to enact retribution, not for myself alone, but for Marcus. I would show him that promises, responsibility, and action were true power, not shiny appearances or sweet words. That morning, I stood in the kitchen. Marcus held his breakfast bowl, trembling. You're really going to sell the car?" "Yes." I placed the keys calmly on the desk, fingertips lightly tapping the wood. "I told you, since you believe I'm not your father, the consequences are yours alone." He grabbed his phone, calling Veronica. I didn't intervene, simply watching him pace anxiously in the sunlight, fists clenched, face flushed. On the other end, Veronica screamed, "You can't do this to Marcus. He's just a child." A child? A child dares to say I'm not his father. I'm merely letting him face the consequences of his own words. I lifted my coffee calmly, hands steady as steel. Marcus shouted, "You're crazy. Mom will sue you. Go ahead." I replied lightly. In the afternoon, I sat in the study, going through past invoices, 9 years of expenses, tuition, summer camps, tutoring, car, computer, each penny the product of sweat and labor. Marcus glanced at the invoices, eyes flickering with panic, though he still tried to stay defiant. "This is torture," he said. "Torture? Or the seeds you yourself planted?" I said coldly. At that moment, he felt, for the first time, the weight of careless words. I decided he needed to learn responsibility through reality, not as punishment, but as education. I contacted the school, halting the next month's tuition, explaining it was a result of Marcus's personal choices. Marcus turned pale, trembling, drained of all energy. He tried to argue and beg at home, but I remained calm, measured, unaffected by his emotions. In the following days, Veronica attempted calls, messages, even legal threats to make me change my decision. I remained unshaken, resolute. Marcus grew anxious. The security he had relied on, money and resources, was gone. For the first time, he felt fear and helplessness. Meanwhile, I discreetly investigated Derek's background. I discovered he wasn't the omnipotent figure Marcus had been led to believe, living in a cheap apartment, his so-called fitness career merely a combination of online retail and part-time coaching. His promises of investments and resources couldn't withstand reality. I compiled all these facts, planning to let Marcus see the truth, not by my words, but by reality itself. This calm and methodical approach came from past humiliations. Only by controlling the situation and holding all information could one make an overconfident opponent face real consequences. Marcus tried contacting Veronica for intervention. I remained silent, secretly pleased as I watched him struggle. For the first time, he realized the world doesn't revolve around every word he says. Days later, the school notified, if tuition wasn't paid, Marcus would be expelled the following week. This was exactly as expected. Marcus experienced, for the first time, the tangible cost of words and choices. Anxiety, fear, and stubbornness swirled within him like a flame. Monday morning, I woke up before Marcus as usual. Sunlight streamed into the kitchen. He sat at the table, visibly uneasy, fingers drumming the cup's rim. "How do you plan to deal with the school?" I set down my coffee, eyes steely. He lowered his head, voice barely audible, "I want to ask Derek to help pay the tuition." I shook my head, deliberate and calm, placing the invoices before him. "Derek? You really think he can cover all this? I know he's just a part-time coach, still behind on rent." Marcus looked up, pale. What are you saying?" I opened the computer, showing Derek's registered online fitness courses, retail store financial records, even forum complaints about selling substandard supplements. Each piece of evidence was clear and undeniable. This can't be." Marcus stepped back in shock. "It's possible, and it's true." I handed him a stack of printed documents. "Your mother and Derek spun stories to make you think I was the obstacle, but they themselves cannot sustain their own lives." He opened his mouth to speak, but I interrupted, "No excuses. Look at this and talk to them again." That afternoon, I formally submitted Marcus's tuition termination to Westfield Academy and CC'd Veronica, stating the reason was her child's personal choices. The school confirmed, Marcus had 5 days to cover tuition or face expulsion. Marcus panicked. He grabbed my arm. "Dad, you're crazy. Mom will have lawyers." I smiled coldly, pushing him gently away. "Let her come. I have all the documents and evidence. This is on you." The next 2 days, Marcus broke down. He posted on social media, accusing me of abuse and selfishness, tagging colleagues, friends, and even distant relatives. I said nothing, just observed. On Wednesday, Veronica arrived with Derek, dressed in bright colors and sunglasses, radiating confidence. She went straight to the living room. "What are you doing?" "Marcus is your victim of revenge." I stood by the sofa, coffee in hand, calm. "He planted the seeds himself. Enjoy the consequences." Derek tried to intimidate. "You can't do this. He's a child. Your actions are illegal." "Illegal?" "I have invoices, records, and school confirmation." I stared at him coldly. "Where's the fatherly love you promised? Words without action. You can't even cover your own bills." Derek's confidence crumbled. Marcus watched in disbelief. For the first time, he realized the new father figure was nothing but talk. Thursday, I received news. Derek was reported for selling counterfeit supplements. The police began investigation, and he might face criminal charges. I said nothing, merely sipped coffee and observed Marcus's expression shift from shock to regret. At dinner, Marcus said quietly, "Dad. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those things or trusted them." I lifted my head calmly. "I never denied your feelings, but everyone must face the consequences of their words." He choked back tears, lowering his head. "I understand. I see now that you've always provided for me. I want to make it right. I don't want to lose you again." I nodded, placing my hand on his shoulder. "Good. Now you understand reality. Fatherhood isn't just promises, it's action. You see, those who speak beautifully but cannot act are not to be trusted." Friday, I took Marcus to Westfield to retrieve his belongings. The administrator nodded slightly as he entered, silently acknowledging this as a lesson. On the way home, Marcus was silent for a long while. Finally, he said, "Dad, maybe I can start at community college and transfer to State University in 2 years." I smiled faintly. "That's good. Learning independence and accountability is more important than anything. As for those who spout pretty words, reality has answered them." Over the weekend, Veronica called, trying to convince me to resume tuition payments. I didn't answer, simply muting the phone. Marcus sat beside me, watching me sip coffee, eyes full of gratitude. He finally understood that my calm and steadfastness were his truest support. I acted without impulse, without anger, only with planning and facts. Derek was under investigation, Veronica in difficulty, and Marcus saw reality clearly, learning the weight of responsibility and choice. Retribution wasn't for malice, but to educate, revealing the emptiness of false promises and glossy appearances. Monday morning, Marcus made breakfast. The eggs spilled, the bacon slightly burned, but he tried. I watched and nodded gently. This is real growth. I knew the war was over, but the lesson would not be forgotten. He had learned the connection between action and consequence, and to discern who was truly trustworthy. I lifted my coffee, sunlight spilling onto the driveway, smiling faintly. Marcus walked up softly, "Dad, thank you. I'll remember. I patted his shoulder. Just remember. Don't be fooled by pretty lies again. At that moment, I understood, revenge wasn't for retaliation, but for education, letting truth and responsibility triumph over lies and false appearances.